presentation there? Got it, Taryn?
Looking good for me.
Awesome. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Taryn. Like you said, I actually was chuckling a little bit when you said it's an honor. I have to tell you, I feel like it's an honor that you guys asked me to do this. I'm really excited to talk to everybody today about labor burden. And so, our fun title that we came up with, we asked some people to contribute, and we got a great title, which is Labor Burden Shouldn't Be a Burden, which I think is great because there are a lot of people that get confused, but I think when we break it down today, it's actually going to be a pretty simple process that you can follow. And I'll make sure that Taryn has these slides if anybody wants to request the slides and kind of see the calculations that we're going to go through today. You'll be able to do that. So we're going to be focusing on job costing labor burden. We'll talk a little bit at the beginning about why labor burden in general, just for all companies to know, is good. But specifically, of course, we're going to be talking about construction companies and labor burden and why that's important to know and be able to use in your financial analysis and in your bidding your jobs. It's super important. So like Taryn said, I'm Tonya Schulte. I've been doing construction accounting for about 20 years. Founded my own company a couple of years ago, and I'm advanced certified in QuickBooks Online, all those things. All these little certifications, but I think really what's most important is that the other Schulte to my Schulte and Schulte is my husband, Joe. He's our managing partner, kind of handles contract and those kinds of things. And I'm a mom of 3, and most importantly, a chocolate lover. So Taryn has my address. You guys can all send me chocolate after the end of this. So, okay. Why is labor burden important? So first, we're the CCAN, Construction Company Advisors Network. And I think as advisors, it's really important for us to know why this is important to us and why it's important for us then to be able to effectively pass this information on to our clients. I think a lot of people that are in the construction industry, a lot of small business owners especially, but even some of those medium-sized companies, they're not quite sure about labor burden. They maybe have heard of it. Someone may have told them they should be figuring their labor burden. Maybe they figured it a little bit. But I think it's really important for us as advisors to know how to calculate these things and why. And here's some of the whys, because you can, as the advisor, come help your clients stop losing money. And like I said, we're going to be focusing more on the field side, on job costing. But a lot of times, even within the office personnel, it's really a good idea to calculate that labor burden and know what that true labor burden is for your clients across the board so that they can do things like analyze whether or not they can actually afford a new hire, both in the office and in the field, which again, it's very important for us as advisors to be able to bring this information to our clients so that they can help make some of those, or we can help them make some of those decisions in an informed manner. So here's really what we're going to get to at the end of today. This is the actual formula that we want to reach. And so this is it. This is the basic labor burden calculation, which is that our burdened annual cost, so the burdened cost for the whole year, divided by the total actual hours worked. And I put that in red because I think that's sometimes a piece of this that especially company owners sort of forget to work out and forget to think about, is going to equal our employee production rate per hour. So we're going to break that all down, and I'm going to show you exactly how we get to that employee production rate per hour. So we're going to start with, let's say that your client has called you and said, hey, we're thinking about hiring Joe Schmo to be a foreman. We need a new foreman. And you're going to start talking to them about how to calculate Joe's labor burden. So the first thing, we were talking about actual hours worked. The first thing that we need to think about is how many hours does Joe actually work? So, they've said they want to hire a foreman. He's going to be a full-time employee, so it's 40 hours a week. There's 52 weeks in a year. So Joe could work 2,080 hours per year. But we really need to take into account when he's actually working And so we're going to have to subtract 6 holidays, 10 vacation days, 6 sick or personal days, however that breaks down in the states that you are handling clients in. Some states have different regulations about those things, vacation days and sick and personal days. And of course, one of the things, it's good, again, as advisors for us to be able to help our clients do is to help them build solid programs so they can keep employees happy. And so these are the types of things that, benefits and days that they get are things that we have to take into account in terms of actual hours worked. And so when we subtract, and of course, I wanted to point out too that on this, we have 2 days of training and certifications. And that's something that you really want to help your clients take a look at, especially in the construction field, because as you guys know, there are so many regulations from government agencies or from, like OSHA and state and local regulations that they may be needing to take days off, some hours or some full days. And so really take a look at what your clients are having to deal with in terms of regulations when you're doing this calculation, and help them figure out exactly how many days or hours their employees would need to take for those training and certifications. But if we go with this, the days that we have listed here, that's a whole 24 days then that Joe Schmo is not really going to be working for your client. So that, when we subtract it out, leaves us with that 1,888 available working hours that we've gotten to now. So, that's a place to start. And I think that, again, as we're coming to this as construction advisors, a lot of our clients, they may stop there. They may go, okay, I've thought this through really well. I've taken all these days that I know that that Joe Schmo is not really going to be there because he's officially called out or he's officially at a training. But again, in just us always wanting to help our clients do everything to the to our best ability, and so that they'll have the best financial analyzation information, then let's start taking into account and help them figure these types of things out. How many hours, if Joe's a foreman, he's going to have to be conducting meetings with his crew so they know exactly what needs to be done on the job that day. Making sure that he's keeping accurate time records for his crew. And even if, it's not Joe Schmo, the foreman, if it's, Joe Blow, the guy that's just working out in the field, just a regular laborer, he's still going to have to attend those meetings and take care of his own time. So, and those are things, again, that you can help your clients figure out. Do the foremen, are they having to take more time out during the week for this? Versus laborers, they are taking a little bit less time out during the week for these types of things. Maybe the laborers never have any shop time. But again, just helping them think through these things from the beginning, when they're first getting ready to figure out what a foreman costs them and versus what a laborer costs, and kind of come up with a plan for how you're going to help your clients figure out exactly what their hours are that they're going to subtract again. So for Joe Schmo here, we're going to subtract 2 hours from each remaining work week that we have for him for these meetings, timekeeping, shop time, things like that. And so we're going to say that adds up to another 94 hours. So now then, his actual annual hours worked, we're going to figure out as 1,794 available working hours for him to actually be out in the field. If he's a plumber, these are the times he's actually putting that pipe into the ground or up through the walls, that kind of thing. So, okay. And then, like I said, you guys will get copies of these slides, so you can kind of take a look at this a little bit more and have kind of how we do this calculation. But let's just go through this and talk about this. So this is now then what we're going to add and say, this is the labor burden being what we're adding onto the official cost of what we're paying the employee for his salary. Then these are the things that are going to be added on top of that, costs that are added to the company because we've hired a new person. So obviously a lot of small business owners know they're going to, once they hire someone, in addition to the salary that they're paying them, they're going to be paying payroll taxes. And all of the amounts, just so you guys know, that are in that middle column there, all those dollar amounts are an annual figure. So we're saying that when we hire Joe, we'll be paying $780 a year for him in payroll taxes, $1,974 a year for him in workman's comp. And again, just always keeping we're the advisors, we're the experts, we're the ones helping our clients figure these things out. Dig into their workman's comp rates a little bit. Know things like roofers are going to have those higher modification rates. They have a higher risk because their guys are up, off the ground, and they've got fall protection and all of that to think about. So help them understand what their risks are and what their rates are and ways that they can lower that and know that. So workman's comp, health insurance, whatever your clients' companies are offering or available to offer. And you can see on the right-hand side there how we figured it. So if the company has a $435 a month company contribution, then that's what we need to add for the overall year to Joe's salary or pay rate that we're giving him. And then, if the company, again, if they offer a 401k plan, and then we get into some costs that this is where people start to kind of forget that we need to add some things into the labor burden. Cell phone costs, any kind of labor, field labor where they're communicating back and forth with one another. So if you have radios, cell phones, those types of things, that needs to go in here. Gas and vehicle maintenance, training. Again, back to, you're going to have OSHA courses and other things that you may do in-house or you may send out, but either way, it's probably going to cost you some kind of money for those trainings. And so you're going to add that in. Tools and equipment. Again, based on kind of your average, what you would spend for the month to have that extra employee, what you're going to need to have him to have out in the field to be able to do his job. And then personal protective equipment, what the company provides, say safety glasses or steel-toed boots, things like that, and uniforms if your clients are providing those. And then, of course, company events, which, again, helping our clients have their keeping their employees happy. And so help them to figure out, how many barbecues and Christmas parties do you guys want to do over the year? And then what does that translate out to in terms of each individual employee, how much that's costing for each individual employee. So for the whole year then, if we take a look at this, our total burden cost for bringing Joe Schmo on is that $16,714. And now we've gotten that's what we're going to add to his yearly rate. And so here's where we can see how we're going to do that. So if we go ahead and bring Joe in at $16 an hour, and we can see what his base pay rate is going to be for the whole year there in the middle. And so we're adding that $16,000 to that. So this employee that we're only paying $16 an hour is now basically costing our client's company almost $50,000 for that whole year. And then that is something that I think a lot of small business owners, as I'm going through this with them as an advisor, a lot of times they're surprised by what an employee actually costs them. And so back to that slide where we were talking about, it's really good to be able to give them this information and talk them through, okay, I know you want to hire Joe. I know you guys are feeling stretched and you need another foreman, but let's walk through all the costs and make sure that we can afford Joe right now. And if we can't, then there's some analysis that we can do to go back and help them figure out, why that might be. Do we need to cut costs in other places? Or not being as productive as we could be out in the field? As it could be that our foreman could handle things if you were given better tools. So again, just helping your clients analyze all of these things and really dig in and understand what's happening in their company and why. And then the actual total working hours that we figured out when we were back on the first few slides, we figured that Joe is really only going to be working 1,794 hours a year. So here's where we get into the math and we start doing the calculation to figure out what Joe's costing. And then this is where we're going to use this for our financial analysis tools and to do our bidding and our budgeting for our jobs. So we take that burdened annual cost, the total that Joe costs us for the whole year, including what we're paying him, plus all the things that we figured out on the last slide that are costs added to him. We're going to divide that by the total hours worked for the year, that 1,794. And that's going to give us our production rate per hour. So that's the $27.86. That's the number now that we can start to use when we want to bid new jobs and budget for those jobs. This is how, and again, this isn't the price that we would be charging a customer. This is what Joe actually costs us to be out on the job. So now we want to add a margin to that, or your clients want to add a margin to that when they then go out and bid the job. But this is their good budget number that they can use and say, this is what Joe's going to cost us when he's out there all the time. So, and then, it's always good. Again, these are things that I kind of try to really walk through with my clients when we're figuring out labor burden. Just know that for those production rates, this is his burden rate per hour. So, he $16 an hour, but burden rate is the $11.86, which of course is an obvious calculation. That's the $27.86 minus what we're paying in the $16 an hour. And then that labor burden rate is the 74.1%. Again, a lot of my clients are really surprised at, kind of what their actual labor burden rate is when they figure out what their costs are for every employee that they have, both in the office and out in the field. So that's our basic labor burden calculation. So we know why. We know, we want to help our clients make better informed decisions. We want to help them be able to bid their jobs better, stop losing money every time they go out. A lot of our clients at our company, especially when they're small and they're just getting started, they know that they should figure labor burden. They don't often take the time to go through all these calculations. They just don't have the time. They're very busy. They're out in the field. They're doing things. And so, I've seen a lot of companies where they'll say, okay, I know I'm going to pay Joe Schmo $16 an hour. And I know that I'm going to add some costs in there. And so they'll just sort of run a calculation in their head and say, okay, I think he's probably going to cost me, if I'm paying him $16, he'll probably cost me like $20 an hour. And they'll put that as a budget number, and they'll base their bids off of that $20 an hour budget number because it seems great to them. Like they've added a whole $4 per hour to his thing. And you'd be surprised how many small business owners, that's just how they do it, because they're in a hurry and they need to get it done. And so they just figure it in their heads and they kind of add that. And then they begin losing money on all their jobs and they can't really understand why. They go back and they look through material costs and material budgeting and it all seems right. And so this is where, as construction company advisors, it's really a great thing for us to come in and sort of save the day for them and say, okay, have you figured your labor burden? Do you really know what your actual production hours are for all of your field employees? Do you know what their how many hours they're actually working on the job? So this is a great tool for you as a construction company advisor, and a way to begin setting yourself, your company, your firm apart from other, say accountants or bookkeepers who are just basically taking the information that the client gives them. This is a really good way to actually advise them and help them get to the right information and do better when it comes to their bids. So to that point, here are some things that I've seen small business owners, and like I said, even sometimes those medium business owners, where they've been doing this for a while and they kind of have an idea of what the labor burden is and how to calculate it, but they don't calculate it often enough, or they don't know exactly the things to add. So as an advisor, here's some things that you can keep in mind not to forget. So the major one that I see over and over and over that small business owners forget, in my experience, is the actual hours worked calculation. They'll often figure out labor burden and they add that rate, but they forget that initial part of taking into account what are the actual production hours, and that your foreman is going to have to take some time out of his day where he's not actually, again, back to the plumbing example, he's not actually putting pipes in the ground. He's not actually putting pipes up through the wall. He's sitting there filling out time cards for his guys, or he's back at the shop having a communication with the main supervisor over what jobs are out there. So those types of things that small business owners often forget to do correctly. And then I think a lot of times there's like this pendulum swing, and that's what the rest of this slide is all about, that sometimes small business owners only figure in like taxes and workman's comp and health insurance. And so they forget that there are a lot of things that we should consider and take into account when it comes to what we want to include into these labor burdens. But then I've also seen the pendulum swing the other way, and I've had small business owners come to me and say, absolutely everything that we're doing across the board and all of our overhead costs, we turn around and we allocate out into our field job costing. And that's not accurate either. You need to really work with your small business owners to help them get a really accurate picture of what their job costs and labor burden are for job costing. So direct job cost labor burden figuring, as opposed to just sort of taking all your overhead and lumping it into one big thing and allocating every bit of it back to the job, because that's not good accounting practice. So things to remember, like I said. And then just to help them remember that anything that is an indirect cost, but it's actually directly tied to completing that contract work, that needs to be figured in. So again, like I said, there's a huge pendulum swing a lot of times that I see, that people either want to include just a few things or they want to include absolutely everything. And it's our job as the construction company advisors to sort of help them hone in onto what's overhead, what's job costing, and get that sort of straightened out. And then again, like a lot of even bookkeepers and advisors that we've worked with will figure in all those things, but the types of things that they often forget are, like we were talking about, mobile phones and radios. Depreciation, that's a huge one that I see a lot of our clients and some other advisors I've worked with not take into account. And I think part of it is because, especially when we're, bookkeepers that are dealing with day-to-day entries for our clients, things like depreciation that aren't in front of us all the time, where we're not actually having to do the physical data entry on those on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, we just sort of tend to forget and set that aside and think, oh yeah, depreciation, at the end of the year, that's going to be handled with taxes. But it's something that we do want to take into account a lot of times when we're considering what our indirect costs are and how to figure out a labor burden. We talked about training sort of in depth. Safety items we talked about, and uniforms. Another one that comes up a lot, that again, it's not in front of us every day because, small tool loss does occur. Unfortunately, it occurs quite a bit, but it's not necessarily a monthly expense that we're entering or a daily expense that we're taking care of as accountants and bookkeepers. So that's one that I think needs to be talked about with your clients and understood, like what is your annual average small tool loss and how can that figure into this burden. And then of course, like we talked about, fuel and vehicle maintenance and those types of things. So again, just keeping in mind always that we as the advisors have good information for our clients, and the more that we can parse all of these things out with them and help them understand what is a good direct or indirect cost that needs to be job costed and what's overhead, and put that all together and give them a really solid number that they can then take and use and do really good budgeting and bidding out to their clients. It's very important. And then I included this slide because like I said, I want to get you all copies of the slides if you want them. And this will just give you a reminder of exactly where to go and how to get to the place that Taryn's going to show us now about how to do this within Notify, a good place to get it done. Take it away, Taryn.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that presentation. It was really thorough and got a lot of information in there. I think I learned a lot too. And honestly, I think I'm going to probably use a lot of your phrasing and little bits of knowledge there to talk to some of my clients that I work with day to day, because I have people kind of trying to factor in a lot of things that should not be part of job costing into their labor burden just because they, they're expecting Notify to have, their overall company, end of year figures in the system. And obviously, that kind of goes beyond job costing. And it's important to make that distinction between, just general labor burden, job costing, and then, how your company is doing at the end of the year.
Yeah, exactly. Good point.
Yeah, and thank you. Just again, it was a great presentation. I'm psyched to have all this in here.
Thank you.
So before I jump in too much into questions, I just wanted to show everyone our rates table inside Notify. This is actually accessed, and Tonya touched up on it very briefly there at the end there, but you can get to here by going to your admin section. It's triggered by a little button in the top right corner, and you go to the rates card here. This will just pull up anyone that's in your system as a user, as a 1099 vendor. You'll see they're marked as subs. Equipment is factored in here as well. Our table is pretty simple. It's not the most technical thing, but it's just a way for you to plug in different values as, dollar figures, percentages. Here's our taxes, benefits, insurance, workman's comp, union, and then others if you have any kind of X factor or overhead that you want to factor in. Again, as we had just kind of touched up on, it's not something that, you should be trying exceedingly hard to try to nail down this perfect number for, outside costs on a job, because that's, kind of outside the realm of job costing. But if you have anything else that you want to factor in here, that's always fine. In Notify, the end rate that's going to be used for job costing is this last column that's under hourly rate here. And you can actually set up the users as yearly if you want, and we'll factor it into an hourly rate. So it kind of just depends how you want to fill out each of these different users tables. And then they can always be adjusted when entered onto the job. Just to show you guys a quick bit on that. Basically, when you're setting up the project and its budget, you can put a user in the job and actually make a manual edit to their rate. This is going to be useful for people who have employees that get paid, a variety of rates based off of different types of work that they're doing. I've always been a fan of the idea of, just having a rate that you would put in. Actually, now I think about it, my account's set up to only role budgeting, but basically you can always plug in, 40 hours. It's usually 45, but in this case, it's 52.87, and so you can always make manual adjustments like this. In this case, I logged it as foreman, so it's not actually going to track time at that rate. But if you chose a specific foreman, in my case, I always call him Paul McCartney or something along those lines. But every hour he logs would use this rate, and it's a nice way to get a little bit more specific on individual parts of the job. We hear this requested a lot when it comes to things like prevailing wage and different types of union wages that go in here. And the really important thing to note with all this is in the time tracker, when you're reviewing time, this is actually something that was very recently changed about Notify, because we didn't always do this in our classic versions. What you can do is come into the review time section, which is kind of your gateway between Notify and your QuickBooks account. And you can make adjustments. So like John came in at, 236.70 here. But if I want to say, like, actually, I have a specific number in mind, I need it to come in at this figure. Once this entry is approved, it'll actually update the cost of the job. So if I come to check in on, this project 1039, I'll be able to get a little bit more accurate of a figure based off of what I had entered there. So that's just a nice little thing I wanted to show about Notify and kind of how to get some more specific costing rates inside our system if you didn't have it automated as it normally would be. Now I'm going to just open up for questions here. I want to see what we have. Laura asked if we're going to be sending the slides. Yes, Tonya will be. Actually, I think the best way to do this, maybe Tonya, is you can send them over to me, and I'll just copy them in with the email that I send out after this. Maybe we'll find a way to do a web link or something like that.
Perfect. Yeah.
Laura Chapman said, excellent presentation. That's always nice. What do you recommend to do with the overall overhead of the company? Yeah, definitely go for that one.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say that's where, again, the idea of the Notify is the job costing piece and overall overhead. It's really great to track that, Laura, and that's where we're integrated with QuickBooks. And so in QuickBooks is where you're going to be tracking everything that's outside of job costing, whereas Notify is the job costing piece.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reality is, people ask, how they should be managing like their office supply ordering in Notify. I mean, obviously we have some ways that you could do it, maybe, if you like our purchase orders, but it's not really something that's ever been expected to be part of our system. It's kind of just, if you're interested in setting it up, it's an option. Kathleen asked if Notify works with QuickBooks Desktop. We're not publicly releasing our QuickBooks Desktop sync. It is something that we have a working beta of, and if anyone's very interested in trying it for themselves, I can look into maybe setting you up. It's probably still a couple months out. I know we've been saying that for probably about a year now, but we do have it working and syncing. It's just a matter of kind of doing some final quality assurance and making sure we are sending out a product to your clients that they're going to be happy with and not just frustrated. Does Notify have an app for mobile? Yeah, absolutely. So actually big part of labor burden is getting the accurate time in. Notify does have a smartphone app. We also aside from having our own smartphone app, can work with ClockShark. So if you're using ClockShark for time tracking, that's another way to get your hours into the system. We can always talk more about that at another time. And it does have the option to upload receipts from purchases. You can request, reimbursements. You can, mark down credit cards from the company and have it sync up with your bank feed in QuickBooks. So we have a lot of neat stuff around that as well. We should have some stuff on board. As of right now, we do not have an integration with T-Sheets as asked by Edward, but definitely, keep your ear to the ground in the Notify networks. You might be hearing something pretty soon in the future around that. That's everything we have in the questions for right now. I want to thank everyone again for joining in. Just to give you guys a little bit more information on the future of CCAN and some more webinars coming up. The next one we're going to be running, and I'm going to try to map down a formal date in the near future before I send out this follow-up email. But we're going to be covering how the integration between QuickBooks and Notify works, just to give you a little bit more detail on, how this is going to be working with your clients' accounts and how to make sure that when they're entering their information into Notify, it ends up in the right place in QuickBooks. Because I've had a good number of people who were like, well, it's getting into QuickBooks and that's enough. And then, one of the advisors will come to me and be like, okay, they never set this up. And all of a sudden, every single expense is uncategorized. We don't want that to happen. And Notify is built to make sure that doesn't happen. So that's going to be our next topic. And we, again, will be following up about that. Also like to kind of bring up something that's a little bit outside of this specific topic, but we are building a new integration with a application called Permit Zone. So if any of your clients are frequently purchasing permits for their jobs, then we'll actually be able to set them up with a system where they put in a request based off of the job site and some information around, their Notify projects, and Permit Zone will actually fetch the permit for them for a small fee. And it's kind of just all automated through our system and theirs. There's not very much double entry involved in the whole thing. And they're actually likely also going to be part of our construction company advising network soon. And we're hoping to have them on as guest speakers soon. So if any of you guys have clients that you think would be interested in this, feel free to reach out to me, and we can set them up with a little sneak peek of how it works, and give them some early access to it. That's all we got for now. Thank you everyone again for joining me. I'll be sending this out into our subscribe list of CCAN members soon. But I also encourage everyone to join our Facebook group. It's a great little forum for just open discussion. I'm always checking in on it, trying to answer any questions, but you also have Tonya and some other notified advisors in the network, and we're always happy to have people discuss amongst themselves and get a little bit more specific answers to their questions. I'm gonna go ahead and stop my recording now. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me or support@notify.com. Question